Hello, I'm Dr. Rostenberg, and I want to personally thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. Stay tuned at the end of the video, and I will give my recipe for your healing process. Now, I wish we could achieve our results with just diet and lifestyle alone, but supplements really do make the difference. And to help you with that, you'll have an opportunity to order supplements at a discounted rate. We'll see you then. You're going to find out that hormones are something that we all have to make sure are working in our favor, because there's a process in our body that causes women to turn into men and men to turn into women. Okay? It's called a hormone imbalance, and it's caused by blood sugar problems. And as men gain weight, their testosterone level goes down, they gain mammary tissue, they have gynecomastia, they have male breasts, and they begin to feminize their entire genetic expression. It's not necessarily a good thing. On the other side, females who become insulin resistant begin to increase their testosterone levels. As the picture on the screen shows you, in a comedic way, there are women who have enough facial hair on their face that they have to shave it off. And the reason that this is happening is a hormone imbalance. So this is serious stuff from the natural medicine and health point of view, because hormones are the most powerful molecule in your body. I don't know of anything stronger than hormones, because when a 6-pound, 8-ounce baby is born, and that baby grows up to be a 250-pound NFL linebacker or a 100-pound piano teacher, the difference between those two outcomes are hormones. It's just, do you get exposed to growth hormone, to testosterone? Do you get exposed to estrogen and other chemicals that change how you express as you go through life? So hormones are phenomenally powerful. Our hormones in our body they're made from cholesterol. You'll see that. Cholesterol is extremely important. I had a young man come into my office today who, bless his heart, he's been very, very depressed and had some personality issues. He's struggled a lot due to neurological problems. And I looked at he had blood work, and his cholesterol is 106. Okay? It's not normal. It's not good. The brain needs cholesterol. Your hormones need cholesterol. So we're just starting the process with him, but you're going to see how important all these things are. So what you need to know about hormones really is, aside from making babies grow up to be men and babies grow up to be women, and that's the effect of hormones. I mean, if you give a male baby high doses of estrogen its entire life, especially at a young age, you're going to change how that baby looks and acts and thinks as it grows up, because hormones are strong enough to change how your brain functions. But hormones go into your cell and they talk to your genes. So hormones go into the cell, they go into the nucleus, they bind in the very center of your cells where all your genetic information is, and they cause action. They cause things to happen. Just like we've all heard of hypothyroidism, how important thyroid problems are. By the way, most people with thyroid issues have other things going on that they blame on the thyroid and things of that nature. But thyroid hormone is a good example. It causes your body metabolism to turn on. It causes genes to express that build protein, that cause your liver to clear cholesterol, cause your brain to function better. So your brain is the tissue in your body that has the most thyroid receptors of anything in your whole body. So people who have brain fog, memory problems, just not feeling energetic, that's why the thyroid hormone is looked at with such interest, because it's a big player in that. By no means the only one, though. So I talked a little bit about this. Hormones are important because they activate genes, and that has huge impacts on our life. Okay, vitamin C is important, right? Vitamin C is an antioxidant, but it does a totally different type of effect in your body. Vitamin C is going to reduce inflammation and just help the machinery of your body work better. Well, hormones are going to cause the machinery of your body to be built. It's going to cause signals to turn on and all sorts of pathways to activate. I show these slides a lot. There's some new information in here, but clearly the biggest hormone problem we have is that as a group of people, we are overweight. And they just came out and showed us that muscle tissue is an organ. Muscle tissue is an organ, just like your pancreas and your liver and your brain. And what they mean is that muscle tissue releases things into the bloodstream, and muscle tissue soaks things up from the bloodstream. So it communicates like an organ. It absorbs some things and secretes other things. Well, your fat tissue is exactly the same way. So if you consider somebody in our society who might be obese, they would have maybe 30 or 40 pounds of extra fat tissue on their body. That's 30 to 40 extra pounds of an organ. What if your liver grew by 30 or 40%? What if your pancreas doubled in size or tripled? We would have serious health problems if that were to happen. So thinking about hormones a little differently, the obesity epidemic is really a hormone problem, because fat tissue is releasing every second that we're alive molecules into your bloodstream that influence your behavior, your sleep cycle, your cortisol levels, your appetite, your digestion. It's amazing. It's not quiet tissue, it's always active. So if you double the size or triple the size of it, then that's a lot louder signal that your body has to deal with. So that's one of the benefits of optimizing your body composition. Yeah, I'm going to pick on our healthcare system because I don't really like it, right? Like many of you, I mean, we're stuck in this place where we have really good tools when their life's in danger. I don't know of a better place in the world to have a serious car accident, knock on wood, or have some serious problem, because in terms of intervention at a critical stage, we're very good at that. I don't want to take that away from us, but healthcare, we're terrible. We're last. I mean, in every measure, we come in last in many, many measures. So this is comparing us to those 11 countries, and we're at the bottom of the list. Part of the problem is right here. So when they study GMO food, and they tell you the food is safe, the animals which we fed the GMO corn, rice, or corn, soy, wheat to, they didn't develop any problems. It's safe for human consumption. Okay? Well, they did about a 9-week study. This is a study in France that took 9 months. So the animals in this study ate exclusively GMO corn, I believe. This came on my radar screen today, brand new information that was published out there. What you're looking at, the two charts in the top, the two top charts with the bars going sideways, bars going vertical, those are measures of the United States. So they're comparing the United States on top to Great Britain on the bottom. We have a lot in common historically and ancestrally, so they have kind of the same genes as a lot of us do. So you can see that obesity is decreasing in the United States for the age group 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and 40 to 49. You can see that by the dark blue bar is longer than the gray bar. The gray bar is the most current data. So there's decrease in obesity in that group. Or I should say it's calorie consumption. Let me rephrase. That's actually calorie consumption. So people in my age group, individuals who are graduating from college, young families, they're eating less calories. Now, is that because of the Great Recession and because we can't afford to eat out as much and we're forced to eat at home? Maybe that's not a bad side effect of that situation. But the baby boomers are eating more than they did last year. So I'm going to pick on baby boomers because, well, we gotta call a spade sometimes. But they're overindulging. So the baby boomer group, 50 to 59, they're still eating maybe a little too much shrimp and lobster and 16-ounce steaks and baked potatoes with giant piles of butter on it. Maybe a little too often. And it's fine if you did that for a few years but as you get older, that's going to catch up to you. It's very calorie dense food. I'm not saying don't eat it. I'm just saying that group of people are consuming more calories while everybody else in this country is reducing. Now the bottom line shows the average daily consumption of all British people. So you can see that across the board, everybody in Britain's kind of cutting back. They're like, yeah, maybe this obesity thing maybe there's something to it. Maybe we should just reduce our calories a little bit. And in every species ever studied, calorie reduction extended lifespan. Whatever your body does, whenever your body does anything, it creates inflammation. Inflammation is not always a bad thing. It's just a part of life. So the more your body spends on digesting food, the more inflammation is created. The more you exercise and run marathons, the more inflamed you get. It's always the balance between how many antioxidants do you have versus how much inflammation you're making. So what they're finding, when you reduce calories, you extend your lifespan, and a lot of that has to do with you're not producing that. Eating food actually can kind of injure you if you eat too much, obviously. So percentage of obesity in the US, I just want to talk about that real quick. On the upper right-hand side, the arrow's pointing up. We're getting worse. This country, obesity in this country is still getting worse. Yet in Great Britain, it's going down. So my question is because our food supply is so GMO'd and full of pesticides that it's actually making us obese, even in the groups of people who are cutting their calories down. How's that possible? Maybe there's toxins in the food that are responsible, that interfere with our hormones. I'm willing to bet that's the case. So I want to show you a video about frogs real quick.
People in the world who can discuss toxicity in babies is an expert in frogs.
It was a surprise to me as well that I would be talking about pesticides, that I'd be talking about public health, because in fact I never thought I would do anything useful. Frogs. And in fact, my involvement in the whole pesticide issue was sort of a surprise as well when I was approached by the largest chemical company in the world, and they asked me if I would evaluate how atrazine affected amphibians or my frogs. Turns out atrazine is the largest selling product for the largest chemical company in the world. It's the #1 contaminant of groundwater, drinking water, rainwater. In 2003, after my studies, it was banned in the European Union, but in that same year, the United States EPA re-registered the compound. We were a bit surprised when we found out that when we exposed frogs to very low levels of atrazine, 0.1 parts per billion, that it produced animals that look like this. These are the dissected gonads of an animal that has 2 testes, 2 ovaries, another large testis, more ovaries, which is not normal, even for amphibians. In some cases, in other species like the North American leopard frog, we showed that males exposed to atrazine grew eggs in their testes, and you can see these large yolked up eggs bursting through the surface of this male's testis. Now, my wife tells me, and I'm sure Penelope can as well, that there's nothing more painful than childbirth, that I'll never experience it, I can't really argue that, but I would guess that a dozen chicken eggs in my testicle would probably be somewhere in the top 5. In recent studies that we've published, we showed that some of these animals, when they're exposed to atrazine, some of the males grow up and completely become females. So these are actually 2 brothers consummating a relationship. And not only do these genetic males mate with other males, they actually have the capacity to lay eggs, even though they're genetic males. What we proposed and what we've now generated support for is that what atrazine is doing is wreaking havoc, causing a hormone imbalance. Normally, the testis should make testosterone, the male hormone. But what atrazine does is it turns on an enzyme, the machinery, if you will, aromatase, that converts testosterone into estrogen. And as a result, these exposed males lose their testosterone, they're chemically castrated, and they're subsequently feminized because now they're making the female hormone. Now, this is what brought me to the human-related issues, because it turns out that the #1 cancer in women, breast cancer, is regulated by estrogen and by this enzyme aromatase. So when you develop a cancerous cell in your breast, aromatase converts androgens into estrogens, and that estrogen turns on or promotes the growth of that cancer so that it turns into a tumor and spreads. In fact, this aromatase is so important in breast cancer that the latest treatment for breast cancer is a chemical called letrozole, which blocks aromatase, blocks estrogen, so that if you develop the mutated cell, it doesn't grow into a tumor. Now, what's interesting is, of course, that we're still using 80 million pounds of atrazine, the #1 contaminant in drinking water, that does the opposite, turns on aromatase, increases estrogen, and promotes tumors in rats, and is associated with tumors, breast cancer in humans. What's interesting is, in fact, the same company that sold us 80 million pounds of atrazine, the breast cancer promoter, now sells us the blocker, the exact same company. And so I find it interesting that instead of treating this disease by preventing exposure to the chemicals that promote it, we simply respond by putting more chemicals into the environment.
Yeah, that wasn't meant to be necessarily an easy thing to watch, but that's pretty important. That's a pretty important study. And we can extrapolate that information to a lot of current trends we see on a society level, on a sociological level. But he said something very interesting, that the frogs are being chemically castrated. Well, I think the same thing could be said is happening at a population level in our same group of people. I mean, sperm rates, they've been monitoring this. Sperm rates have dropped significant amounts over the last few years, as you'll see. But I think the takeaway from that is, you know, the companies that sell toxic poisons that poison the environment are also in drug development. And they make money on both sides of the trade, if you will. It's kind of like not a good deal. So, you know, the onus is on the individual to educate yourself and sort of choose to extricate yourself from that situation and don't participate. That's how you protect yourself. Waiting for change to come from the top, you may be waiting a very, very long time. But the more people that make healthy choices and educate themselves about this, that has its own power as well, and that momentum starts to grow. This study is another kind of data point on this idea of hormones changing, you know, sex ratios. This was a native people in Ontario, and they were placed on a reservation, and my understanding is on 3 sides of the reservation is a petroleum refinery. And when they were placed on the reservation, they had, I believe the study said, about 55 to 54% male births. Now, Mother Nature provides for more male babies to be born because male children are a little more aggressive and take a few more risks. If you have a boy at home, you could corroborate my story. And some of those male children, you know, lose their life, I suppose, in accidents or something. And so by the time, you know, puberty and the time to reproduce comes, there's about 50-50 males and females, okay? Male babies are bigger, they have higher calorie requirements. So if a mom, you know, it's harder on the mother to bring a male baby to term. It's just the way it is. Male babies are more often miscarried when there's a health challenge because it takes more calories, more fuel, more nutrition to grow the male baby than it does to grow the female counterpart. But now, after being on this reservation for, I suppose, a few decades, they give birth to about 35% males. It's really sad, but it's happening to us as well. So there are things in plastic that change male hormones, that interfere, and you'll see this interferes with women too, but of course I want to, you know, honor the men in the room as well. There's metalloestrogen. So if you look up onto the internet and you type in metalloestrogen, what you'll find is things like cadmium, arsenic, and other heavy metals, in fact, act like estrogen inside your body. So that's kind of, you know, a wild idea, but it's totally true. Heavy metal poisoning. So when you buy food like Skittles, like since we just had Easter, this would be a good thing to bring up, like Skittles and colored food that like processed food that's like bright blue and bright red and bright orange and yellow. Well, it's made that way from heavy metals. They use heavy metals as food coloring because any chemist knows, you know, if you reduce these elements down to their basic nature and they have color. I mean, there's certain elements that are very colorful. I actually use that in the food coloring. So boys and girls are eating candy, and adults too, and they're getting poisoned with heavy metals in the food coloring. And then they urinate out, they lose all their zinc, they lose their magnesium, and then they get, you know, attention deficit disorder, and they can't focus, and they can't sleep, and they can't calm down, and it's just this ongoing story. But it's also affecting our hormones. So they're saying that a mother who's exposed to a lot of estrogen toxins is thereby exposing the child in utero, influencing the development of the fetus, of the baby. Because it's such a, see, if you make a change when you're 20 years old, you know, it changes the course of your life a little bit. But if you make a change in utero, it changes the course of your life a lot because you're happening at such an early point of departure. So they were looking at BPA. This is from 2011. So who here has never heard of BPA? Great, educated group of people. So it's in a lot of different products. You know, we all used to microwave our food in plastic because we were just ignorant. And there's still a lot of ignorance around. So hopefully you've switched to glass or paper or something more appropriate. But it's really toxic stuff. This is what it's doing to sperm. It's causing lower sperm concentration, sperm vitality, lower sperm count, and basically it's causing infertility. So we hear a lot about infertility now. 10% of couples are infertile. Several patients of mine, many people in fact that we work with, are dealing with this. And 30% of the time it's the woman's fault. That's true. The woman's body, women pursue IVF. They do all kinds of drastic procedures because the biological drive to have a child, I'll never understand, but it's pretty strong. That's why we're all here. However, 30% of the time it's the man's problem, and not a lot of attention is given to sperm health. And so when you see men with poor sperm quality, they're toxic with estrogen chemicals. They have a hormone problem from a chemical load that they're unable to detoxify, and that's creating a lot of dysfunction in their testes. So then 30% of the other time, 33 to be exact, would be both. So 30% of the time, 33% of the time it's female, 33% of the time it's male, and 33% of the time in infertility it's both. So you should have the husband get checked out as well. This is a disturbing fact, and I don't mean it to upset anyone, but I was looking online at newspaper articles, and there's evidence of 10-year-old girls who are pregnant now. Does anybody not know that before tonight's? 10-year-olds pregnant. So there was an article, and it was in Milwaukee or something, and this poor girl, she was sexually assaulted, and the mom figured out a few months later that she was pregnant. Rather than talking about the fact that how is it physically possible for a 10-year-old girl to be pregnant, the article went on and on about all kinds of other stuff. But I'm sitting there reading this going, the bigger problem, aside from child abuse, of course, is that a 10-year-old is capable of being pregnant. 150 years ago, women in Norway had their period when they were 16 and a half. That's about the historical average. So what's changed? How is it physically possible for a 10-year-old to have a mature enough body to carry a pregnancy? Estrogen toxins, hormone disrupting chemicals. And I say these things to, on one level shock everyone, but on another level it's the truth. We have to kind of wake up to the fact that we're poisoning the environment and ourselves and our neighbors if we're not being careful about these chemicals. So PCOS, again, infertility, and as you'll find out, some of the insulin resistance that we talked about in the beginning that causes women to become masculinized and men to become feminized. These toxins that they're spraying on our food are not doing us any favors. Even the United Nations, which depending on how, the United Nations came out and said, look, the solution to food shortages is to grow organic. They've looked at all the data all over the whole world, and they figured out that if you go organic, you don't have monocrops that fail, you don't have super bugs that are impossible to kill. It's like we're making the same mistakes in food that we're making in medicine. We just use antibiotics to kill everything, and now you have antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Well, the question would always go back to, does garbage cause flies, or do flies cause garbage? If you never clean the garbage up, the flies will always come back. So there's not a lot of money in cleaning up garbage, though. There's only money in treating garbage, killing flies, I guess, is the way to look at it. But so men, again, when men become obese, they become feminized. Now, does that look like a male breast or a female breast? It's hard to tell. Fat tissue expresses the enzyme aromatase that they talked about in the video. It allows women to produce estrogen to carry a pregnancy, to nourish children. There's a reason why it happens that way. And every molecule of estrogen that every woman in this room has ever made was first a molecule of testosterone. Every single time. There's no other way you can make it. So like the 12th step in the process of creating estrogen is to turn testosterone into estrogen. Men are having the opposite problem. Their testosterone is all of a sudden getting turned into estrogen, and the brain will basically treat estrogen and testosterone the same way. If a man is loaded with estrogen, he will not produce more testosterone, because the brain says we have enough sex hormone in our body. Okay? So if a man was then able to do a detoxification program, and carefully and specifically remove the estrogen from their body with natural medicine, that estrogen level goes down, the testosterone level comes back up. So I like talking about problems, but believe me, solutions are a lot more fun. There's solutions for all these things. So again, they studied this and they went to an elderly care facility and they did blood work on everybody, and they found that the men had 4 times the estrogen that the women had. Huh. Older men had 4 times as much estrogen as the same age women. What happens is men are producing testosterone even at 70 and 80 years old, but because of their excess body fat, because of their metabolic imbalance that they brought with them through life, it's turning their testosterone into estrogen. And the women, of course, once they hit menopause, their estrogen levels drop. So we're becoming progressively exposed to too much estrogen. That's the moral of the story for men. So I talk a lot about adrenal stress. It's a big topic in my office. A lot of patients of mine are dealing with this. I want to bring up one, just a show of hands, does anybody here ever take a shower in the morning with hot water and get lightheaded? That happen to anybody? Okay. The reason that happens is hot water increases blood flow and it makes your blood vessels open up. And people with adrenal fatigue already have low blood pressure, especially in the morning. And so when you put the hot water on the neck, it spreads all the blood out even further and it kind of drains out of the brain a little bit. And they get a little dizzy or lightheaded. It's a common sign of adrenal fatigue is getting lightheaded in the shower. So if you know anybody that's doing that, they need to get their adrenals looked at. But adrenal stress messes everybody's hormones up. Okay? Your body is biologically programmed to survive. If it feels threatened, whether a jerk boss is breathing down your neck or kids are giving you lip or you're fighting with your loved one, whatever, lots of different things can stress you out. You trip a very ancient switch that pushes all of your resources towards making stress hormones instead of sex hormones. And that process is hardwired into your body. So when we're under a high amount of stress, like the red line, there's not a lot of precursors and raw materials left over to make sex hormones, libido hormones, feel-good hormones, okay? People with high cortisol over time, their muscle tissue disappears. They actually eat their muscle up and replace it with fat because they keep getting exposed to the stress hormone and they never get the calming sex hormones, libido hormones that help you kind of put muscle on, like testosterone. Even women have some testosterone. They need some. It's normal. So in this picture, you'll see that the pregnenolone and the DHEA drop off. So as cortisol goes up, the sex hormones go down. The one thing we have to figure out when we're talking about adrenal fatigue is where on this curve is someone. Are they at the top? Are they climbing the peak? Are they falling down off the top? Or are they way at the bottom, just kind of bounce along bottom? And we meet all kinds of people. There's different approaches to handling that kind of a hormone problem. This slide is good evidence too of what the TMZ and the tabloids might call. They might point out that somebody's skinny fat, right? So skinny fat's a real thing. You can't look at someone and go pinch their skin and figure out exactly what they're made of. But if you look deeper with the tools we have, like in our office, we use something called a bioimpedance analysis. Fancy gobbledygook for it puts an electrical signal through your body and it gives us a readout of what you're made of based on how you interact with that signal. Many people are storing fat deep around their gut, around their liver, around their kidney, yet in a swimsuit they don't necessarily look like they have 35% body fat, but they absolutely do. Absolutely. See it all the time. And again, this fat tissue stored deep in your body is a hormone producing organ. And extra fat tissue messes up your hormone system, especially in men. It's going to lower your testosterone every single time. And in women, you become estrogen dominant, which, 98% of every woman we've ever treated is estrogen dominant. There's a couple who maybe weren't, and they had, higher progesterone than estrogen, and that rarely happens. So in women who are over an abundance of body fat, they also produce an abundance of estrogen. Heavy bleeding, clotting, fibroids, endometriosis. It's a story we hear every day. And it's a hormone imbalance. Hormone imbalance. So the person on the left, you can see through where the arrow is on the green arrow on the bottom left, you can see it's kind of white going side to side. That's all the fat packed around the gut. And on the same person, a different individual, but same picture, same location in the body, the arrow pointing in the opposite direction, there's some white signal there, but there's a lot less fat around their guts. And then you can look at over here on the upper right side, this is a kidney and a kidney, okay? So the kidney on the left, you can see is like, you can see the perfect shape of the kidney against the white background. Does everybody see that? The white background is the fat tissue. Now look across the other side. It's a lot harder to kind of see that same picture because there's a whole lot less fat back there. If you saw them in a swimsuit, you couldn't tell who had more body fat. You couldn't tell them apart. So that's the value of looking a little deeper. And this MRI just proves that appearances can sometimes be misleading, right? So is this you? Do you get tired after you eat? Are you constantly hungry? Do you have cravings? Do you notice your body hurt for no reason? After you eat, do you want to take a nap? Do you get acne, even though we're not teenagers anymore? Do you have male hair pattern issues? Do you notice black hair around your navel or around the nipple? In females, that's a masculinization of their hormones, and it always goes back to insulin resistance. So I mentioned in the beginning that when we're insulin resistant, women turn towards men biochemically, and men turn towards women. It's kind of like, the world getting flipped upside down, and there's a whole lot of insulin resistance in our society. So estrogen dominance, you'll find out that that's just really, really hard on your thyroid. Estrogen slows down thyroid function. So, where you store fat tells us a lot about the problem. This person on the right is going to have more of the apple shape. That's less healthy than the pear. Okay, so the apple shape means that they're storing fat in this core abdominal area, and that's harder on the heart. It's more inflammatory, raises blood pressure. But women with PCOS fix their problem. They lower their testosterone levels when they fix their insulin resistance. So if you take away one thing from tonight's talk, every hormone problem is going to have a blood sugar component, because that's how our body works. In women, when the blood sugar is imbalanced and they're insulin resistant, they turn into more male type hormones to get out of balance. And in men, the opposite happens. So everybody with a hormone issue has a blood sugar issue. I show this to my patients all the time. In our paperwork, we're always asking, tell us about your cycle, tell us about your hormone symptoms. And a lot of women have problems with acne, especially younger women, but even middle-aged women do as well. If you can remember high school, it's maybe for most of us, but boys tend to have a lot more acne than girls, as a general rule. And why is that? Testosterone in men and boys and insulin mix together and make acne. Testosterone and insulin cause acne. So women who start having acne have too much and too much insulin. So it's a good key to pay attention to. You see a woman or a young, teenager or a young adult with a lot of acne, you're looking at someone with a significant problem with their insulin and their testosterone levels. Dairy is a big offender because dairy has a lot of insulin in it from cows, so that jacks up our insulin too, and it creates kind of metabolic problems that way. So we're going to get into estrogen a little bit, but progesterone is really, really important for women and men as well, but progesterone offsets pretty much all the negative side effects of estrogen. So progesterone is like the antidote to estrogen, or it truly does create the balance. And when women are cycling, you have two halves. You divide your cycle in half. before ovulation and after. Before ovulation, you're supposed to be estrogen dominant. That's normal. It makes the lining of the uterus thicker. It thickens the lining of the uterus, so that should a fertilized egg land in there, it will survive. Now, once you ovulate, the egg and what was the follicle break apart, and it's called the corpus luteum, which is the part of the cycle that produces progesterone. So women who are ovulating normally produce estrogen in the first half, progesterone in the second half. The progesterone drops, the estrogen drops, and they have a cycle. But what happens is, as women stop having an ovulatory cycle, they can still bleed every month, but they're not actually producing an egg, because chronic stress from adrenal fatigue makes it really, really hard for women to be really stressed out and ovulate at the same time. The odds are low that that happens. So you have all this generation of young women who have fibroids, endometriosis, heavy bleeding, bad PMS, anemia, and it's because they're lacking progesterone. Does anybody here not know someone like that? We hear it all the time in my practice. So optimizing the blood sugar and the insulin pathways really makes a woman ovulate much more effectively. So PCOS is, the woman is not ovulating. She's maturing the follicle, and that second step where it releases from the ovary doesn't happen. So every month it swells and gets bigger and gets stuck there. And then the next month another one shows up, and the next one another one shows up, and the next month another one shows up. And so by the time it gets into a medical office, they're seeing 10 or 12 follicles. It's like a year's worth of ovulation just stuck in it, like halfway stuck there and not releasing the egg. And so that person with PCOS is going to definitely be progesterone deficient because they're not ovulating. But there are vitamins, there are solutions that fix this, that make this work better. So everything, we'll talk about that a little bit towards the end. One quick video to give you guys a break. Okay, good afternoon. We're here with Tricia, who just finished a detox and nutrient protocol with us. She's been working with the nutrients for about 8 days. Tricia, would you mind sharing with us what was going on in your health before you came in to see me?
Okay, well, I had a hysterectomy about 4 years ago, and I've been on hormone replacement after hormone replacement to no avail. I even went with bioidenticals, and it wasn't helping. So I came in and saw Dr. Rosenberg, and within a week I went from having 10 hot flashes a day and night sweats to maybe 1 or 2 a day. And I also have been suffering with a heart palpitation for 5 years, and I haven't had a single one in a week.
Wow, that's amazing feedback for us. So given all the changes you've gone through, was the program difficult, to work with the detox and everything we recommended?
Well, I was surprised because I assumed that during the week I would crave a bunch of stuff because I am a sweet eater, and I actually haven't had a single craving all week.
So would you recommend what you've gone through to other patients who might be dealing with similar problems?
Most definitely. Even though it costs a little bit of money, it's worth it.
I love talking to patients. I learn more from patients than anything else in my entire life. And I think patients they actually are better at summarizing things than doctors are often. I mean, she was very succinct and clear about what she went through. She was dealing with hot flashes that were driving her absolutely crazy. And she had tried everything medical that is available for that, and it didn't do anything. Well, the problem wasn't that she had a deficiency of estrogen per se. She was actually really estrogen toxic, and that was creating a whole other type of reaction. And so we put her on a program that lasts about a week. You eat vegetables, you drink medical food shakes, you take some other nutrition that we select for you, different nutrition for different problems. And this is her after 7 days of eating just vegetables and drinking medical food and taking supplements. So, she she got her results really fast, and then that was, you know, that was what she needed. But estrogen influences a lot of things in our body. And so when you have too much of it, you can suffer from anxiety, insomnia, heart palpitations, high blood pressure, all kinds of side effects that we see all the time. The problem is we just don't know that it's actually a hormone problem presenting as something else. So this is a chart I drew to kind of give you two different ideas about estrogen. Like everything, it's a curve. There's an optimum, there's too little, there's too much. Without a doubt, no questions asked, most people have way too much. Okay? Now, the person who went through a very serious divorce and moved across the country and went through, like, you know, bankruptcy a couple times, the woman who's 37 who went through that and then goes to her GP and they tell her that she went through menopause at 38, that person probably doesn't have too much estrogen. Okay? They have a different type of problem because their adrenal stress was so profound that it just shut down their menstruation. They were put into early menopause because of the profound nature of what they went through. And people go through this, and they're looking for solutions. They're looking for answers. But what you'll find is women with high estrogen tend to have strokes. It causes blood clotting. So you hear about, I think it was Venus Williams, Serena. She got surgery on her ankle, got on an airplane, got a pulmonary embolism from the surgery. So she's an estrogen-dominant female, gets a surgery, it creates inflammation, and the estrogen promotes blood clotting. So now you sit down on a plane, your blood pools, it doesn't get pumped very well, and it kind of thickens and it gets pumped into the lung. It's pretty scary. But that's what estrogen can do. I have patients, but long before I met them, they were on birth control for 30 days and they had a stroke, just like that. Lost the use of their left hand. That's just from being on birth control. So if birth control can cause strokes in some people, estrogen, you're seeing the effect of what estrogen can do. Anti-thyroid, people with low thyroid function are typically estrogen dominant because, as you'll see, estrogen makes the thyroid not work very well. Think about it from Mother Nature's point of view. When a woman's pregnant, her estrogen goes up 30 times normal. 30 times normal in the third trimester. It's a phenomenal amount of estrogen. Without thyroid hormone, the baby won't develop correctly and it won't survive. Will not survive. So what Mother Nature does is when estrogen's elevated, it binds up the thyroid hormone in the mom's blood, keeps it on the back of the UPS truck, and makes sure it gets delivered to the baby and not the mom. Because the mom doesn't need to lose weight or burn fat when she's pregnant. The baby needs the thyroid hormone to grow. So that's the relationship between estrogen and thyroid hormone. So if you have a non-pregnant woman who has pregnant levels of estrogen from taking birth control or being exposed to toxins, her thyroid is not going to get released off the back of the UPS truck very often either. That's why you can do a blood test and they say, well, your levels are fine. Well, it doesn't tell you what's actually getting dropped off. So it's a good study. We don't have time to go into everything here, but in the bottom of the list, I wrote there's a couple genes we look at in my office. Not to get too technical tonight, but we do look at genetic backgrounds in people. We analyze genes to see what's the root cause of these problems. And estrogen definitely slows down the removal of stress hormones. Okay? So someone who has estrogen dominant can handle this much stress versus the same person when they get rid of their estrogen can handle that much stress before they feel the same level of stressed out. So estrogen slows down the clearance of stress hormones. Dopamine, epinephrine, adrenaline. This is why the woman on the video said, I was having a heart palpitation for 5 years. My heart was pounding. It was getting beat up by these stress hormones that were circulating in my body. And after detoxing her, the stress hormones went way down and her heart started to beat regular again. Who here has never felt their heart race? You never had a heart racing? You never felt your heart beat or pound really bad when you're nervous? Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody's felt that, right? So she was living through that every day. Estrogen can make that worse. Hot flashes, dementia, cardiovascular disease, that's the side effect of low estrogen. So estrogen is protective, okay? Like everything, I'm not saying get rid of all of it. I'm just saying most people have way too much. So we talked about the clotting a little bit. Again, estrogen causes blood clotting. So it helps If you have too much estrogen, it's hard for circulation to get into small blood vessels. The blood gets really thick. So as you detox estrogen and metabolize it, things like broccoli, cauliflower, cruciferous vegetables, those are really good estrogen detoxifiers. And companies take the active ingredient in those plants and they put it into supplements so that you can, like, instead of eating 6 pounds of broccoli, you just take 6 capsules and, you know, try to eat 6 pounds of broccoli, right? Yeah, good luck. So again, this whole idea that estrogen causes a thickening of your blood, it hurts circulation, you're going to be more prone to passing out, dizziness, you're not going to be able to exercise well because when your blood has to pump really hard and get into your brain and into your muscles, it's going to have trouble getting into those small blood vessels. So we want to, again, estrogen needs to be balanced, needs to be removed every day. I mentioned that estrogen affects thyroid function. And this is the study that the next two studies kind of back that up. When women are taking birth control, it increases thyroid binding globulin, TBG. That's the thyroid UPS truck, okay? It's holding on to the thyroid hormone, not letting it get delivered. And it's how it gets moved around the body. But the more estrogen you have, the tighter it holds on to that. So it's harder for the hormone to go into your cell and cause your metabolism to speed up and cause you to burn fat and feel more energetic and all the benefits that come from having your thyroid work. Now this other one, again, estrogen therapy, women on estrogen replacement might need more thyroid hormone medication. And I'm not talking about recommending medication only to mention that's what the study's saying. They're saying when women are taking estrogen pills as a hormone replacement or something like that, that their need for thyroid hormone and thyroid medication may need to go up too because of the way those two interact. You'll often see high cholesterol as one of the first markers of a slow thyroid. Toxins, toxins, toxins. Toxins are hormones. That's another takeaway from tonight. Toxins are hormones. They disrupt our endocrine system. They're causing, they're changing our sex hormones. They're changing our development. They're changing the development of animals, and they're affecting our thyroid. So, thyroid's very chemically sensitive. A lot like your check engine light. So you go to the mechanic, you say, hey man, check engine light came on. We were driving to Bend, we turned around, can you take a look at it? Well, the mechanic is not going to unplug the check engine light or cut the cord and say, dude, it's off, rock on. You wouldn't want to go back to a mechanic like that, hopefully. But I'll tell you, that's kind of a metaphor for how thyroid is treated. The number's up, throw something into the body, make the number go back down, you're set. A little while later, add a little more, bring it back down again, you're good to go. Well, I'm not sure that's the right way to treat it. I think you need to treat people and not blood tests and figure out what the root cause of the problem is. So, yeah, a lot of us in this room have, maybe had some of these symptoms at one time or another, but certainly women are the typical person with a thyroid problem. Okay, 9 out of 10 thyroid problems in the United States happen to females. Females have more estrogen. Estrogen causes thyroid problems. You see how that fits together. 9 out of 10 people in America who have an autoimmune disease are also women because estrogen predisposes you to autoimmune disease. You're seeing a pattern. But, infertility, muscle aches, constipation, dry skin, brittle nails, hair falling out, thinning of the eyebrow over here, unable to lose weight despite going on a calorie restriction. Common symptoms. Just proof of how widespread thyroid dysfunction really is. Which is another way of saying proof of how widespread estrogen hormone problems are also out there. So toxins are hormones, and environmental toxins are much stronger than our hormones. The estrogen they use in birth control is 100 times stronger than the estrogen that you make. So birth control works by tricking the woman's body to thinking she's pregnant. Everybody knows how that's what they're doing, right? So if you've been on some women are on birth control for 15 years or more. There's never a situation in nature where a woman's pregnant for 15 years straight. And no species that I'm aware of, right? So there's probably some consequence of that. Women who've gone through that that estrogen becomes valuable. And vitamin, food is medicine, and medicine, in the right dose, they will definitely speed up the removal of these compounds that have built up in the body. There's such a fascinating part of our body. I mean, you wouldn't think little green sac hanging off the bottom of your liver that stores bile would be that important, but my gosh. So who here still has their gallbladder? Okay, there's a few missing. It's a very common surgery. Women are the most common person having their gallbladder removed because estrogen affects the gallbladder very, very strongly. And the gallbladder is really important. It produces soap. That's what it does. Bile is soap. You couldn't live in your house without soap. I would challenge you to do that. That would be a nightmare. Am I wrong? Living without soap? Civilization of itself would crumble, right? But in the same way, your digestion will crumble without soap either. So if you have your gallbladder removed, what you have to do is eat a little bit of bile, aka soap, with your food to make sure that that gets into that tube. But that's what they should do. When they take your gallbladder out, they should give you a bottle of bile support and say, take this for the rest of your life. It'll make a big difference. Go home and heal up, you'll be fine. So estrogen makes the bile really, really thick. So, you have that, like they sell here, the 7th generation dish soap. It's really runny. You could squeeze the bottle really hard and shoot it across the room, right? It comes out really fast. That's what bile is supposed to do. Now, when there's too much, excuse me, when there's too much estrogen in the body, the bile begins to turn to molasses. And if you go grab a jar of molasses and you unscrew the top and you tip it over like this, it might be a while before that hits the floor. Okay? So that soap, that bile, is not going to get out of that gallbladder when you eat. It's not going to be able to be pushed downstream and mixed with your food and help you absorb vitamin D and A and E and K and all these things. So one reason you see so many people with low vitamin D is they just can't absorb fat very well. What's your brain made out of? What are your hormones made out of? Fat, cholesterol. So you're starting to see that a hormone problem causes the gallbladder problem. And then once the gallbladder is not working right, it can cause its own set of hormone problems. So estrogen is really hard on the gallbladder. Women who have been exposed to pregnancy, they've been exposed to a lot of estrogen. Women who are overweight have more estrogen. Men who are overweight have more estrogen. And so you're looking at an organ as a target to tell you if that person has a problem with estrogen. Gallbladder and thyroid, definitely, definitely, definitely. Endometriosis, I tell patients with this type of a problem, I try to explain to them that the only hormone in their body that causes the lining of the uterus to get thicker and grow is estrogen. It's the only thing in the human body that can do that. So endometriosis is like a proliferation of the cells that line the uterus that are either inside the uterus itself, but often they spill out through the fallopian tubes and they start to proliferate in the cavity of the body. They proliferate against the ovaries. They spread, and because what's happening is estrogen is so high in that person's body that it keeps telling those cells to divide and grow, divide and grow. And so you're looking at someone with a very significant estrogen dominance problem a woman who has endometriosis. If the only thing that makes that tissue grow is estrogen and the tissue is growing wild, what other conclusion can we come to, right? And when you start to help remove estrogen from their body, you can start to reverse the root cause of that problem. There's a lot of women and men trying to get pregnant who would make great parents who are having a hard time, and that's frustrating. As a society, you want the good parents to be able to do that. So we're going to look at the low side of the curve now a little bit. So I mentioned the genes MAOA and COMT. Now you don't have to be a big biochem nerd like me to take some value from this. But MAOA And COMT are enzymes that break apart stress hormones. Adrenaline and dopamine and a little bit of serotonin is involved too. By far the biggest complaint in my office is I'm tired, I don't sleep well, and I'm anxious, and my brain doesn't work. Okay? I'm a chiropractor. I see people for neck injuries, back injuries, I see people who can't walk, but by far the biggest complaint are those four. Adrenaline in high amounts makes it impossible to sleep. Try to sleep when you're stressed out. We've all done it. It doesn't work. Your mind is racing, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, might as well get up and write a book or clean your house because you're not going to sleep. It also causes you to, sometimes it causes tingling and numbness in your hands and feet. So I had a case once. I was a younger doctor than I am now, and a woman came in who was, pretty stressed out. She was a smoker and was on antidepressants. And I said, well, it sounds like you're kind of depressed, and so why don't we give you some St. John's wort and we'll help raise your neurotransmitters, which is a great tool for that, by the way. And she takes my advice, and in a couple days, 2 or 3 days later, she starts getting tingling and numbness in her hands and her feet. She gets very concerned, runs to her GP, and the GP says, so let's see, you're a smoker? Okay. You're on an antidepressant, like an SSRI or something? Okay. St. John's wort. Don't take the St. John's wort. I don't care if you keep smoking or taking your antidepressant. But it's what happens on a daily basis. So that story illustrates something. Smoking raises dopamine. All addictive behavior is a dopamine craving. Doesn't matter what it is. Whether you're the guy trying to jump across the Snake River in Twin Falls, or trying to repeat this jump that Evel Knievel didn't do. I mean, you guys heard about that? Yeah, they're going to build a ramp and try to jump across the Snake River. Good luck, right? But that's dopamine, adrenaline junkie. Okay, morphine, heroin addiction, smoking, eating junk food. It's all based on raising neurotransmitters. Every single thing that you're seeing people do, they're self-medicating. They're self-medicating. They're self-medicating. That's all they're doing. Toddlers who get angry and throw a fit, and they get pissed off. They throw their toys everywhere. They stomp their feet. They run and they hit. 30 minutes later, they're calm and talking to you. What they did was they had low dopamine, and they got really pissed off. They got so angry because anger is a side effect of low dopamine. So what do? They give into their anger. They have a fit. They release a bunch of adrenaline, and then their dopamine level kind of creeps back up a little 20 minutes later, and they're like, I'm good. I'm back. I'm not saying I've never done it. I'm just saying that's how it happens, right? But once you know what's going on, you can supersede that behavior and make sure that their dopamine level doesn't drop. So I'm kind of getting off course a little bit. It's an interesting talk. The dopamine part of our body, these stress hormones. But what I want to talk to you all about is that people are born with different varieties of enzymes, okay? Certain people in this room, I am confident of, we have no doubt, have a very slow version of the enzymes that remove stress hormones. So I'll say it a couple times. Individuals in this room have a slow COMT gene, and they have a slow MAOA. This may not mean much to you, but give me a second. I'll put some context to it. MAOA and COMT break apart dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, which means they break apart stress hormones. They make them get out of your body. If you're slow at getting stress hormones out of your body and you're making stress hormones, your stress hormones build up much faster. Does everybody follow that so far? If you're making something at a normal rate and getting rid of it at a slow rate, you're going to get a giant pile of it. Estrogen makes that worse. Estrogen slows down the clearance of stress hormones, which is why you'll find that women tend to have a higher level of anxiety than men. And I think a lot of it has to do with women are estrogen dominant because of all the imbalances I've already talked about. And that is sort of predisposing them to slow clearance of stress hormones. And so they've studied this in labor. They've figured out that when women give birth and they get depression like 2 days later postpartum, what happened was when they were pregnant, the breakdown of stress hormones was slowed. So they built up their levels of dopamine. They didn't get angry. They didn't have cravings. They had like a neurological high from being on a natural antidepressant. And then once they gave birth and their estrogen just goes down super, super fast, all of a sudden this machinery kicks on and starts spitting out all their stress hormones. And then she gets really blue and really emotional. I mean, it's serious stuff. I mean, postpartum depression can really like ruin, make it really hard to be a mom or a dad. So there's really good stuff, really good information out there. And there's a lot of different aspects of these chemicals to our lives. So can't sleep, fatigued, brain fog, and anxious. Most common symptoms in my office, because stress hormones are the biggest problem in everybody's life. And now you get all these little nuances of how to make, you know, who's slow at getting rid of stress hormones, who's fast. The people who don't handle stress well are slow at getting rid of stress hormones. Someone who has these genes that are going slow, MAOA and COMT, they're very smart people. They're smart because they're born with more dopamine inside their brain. So let me walk back a couple steps. They make dopamine like everybody else. They don't break it down like everybody else. They make it like everybody else, but they're slow at breaking it down, so they're more inclined to have a higher amount in their brain. Does that make sense? People who are very good at, you know, like laser focus, when they're healthy, here's what they're going to look like. They're laser focused, they think ahead, they're great planners, they're super detail oriented, they're super organized, disciplined. You know, they could be great athletes, they could be great, you know, business owners, parents, organizers, this kind of thing. That's what happens when they're healthy. When they get stressed out and they have other influences impacting them that slows down the clearance of dopamine even more, then their dopamine levels build way up. And then they get dysfunctional on this of having too much stress hormones. They get super anxious, they can't calm down, and a whole snowball of happened from that. So obviously this is something that I'm very passionate about, but this little curve right here is what I want to draw your attention to. So the MET, that's the person who's born with a slow version of the enzyme that breaks down adrenaline. The person on the left, the valine, that's the person with the average, normal, quote-unquote, faster type. So when they're born, the person on the right, the person with slow neurotransmitter clearance, has more dopamine in their brain. They're the really gifted kids who can't handle stress very well. They're the brilliant PhD researcher who goes to work on his dissertation and gets schizophrenia. Okay? Because the stress of the process blew out his brain's ability to handle all the stress hormones that flooded him, because he can't clear them out. They're coming in faster than he can get rid of them. So, hormones, hormones, hormones. Women and men who have too much estrogen are susceptible to having too much stress hormones in their body. It's just going to make you more anxious. It's going to make it harder to sleep, harder to calm down. You're going to lose a sense of inner peace when you're estrogen dominant. And this is how it works. So we help the body get rid of estrogen. The enzymes that work on your neurotransmitters get a little more balanced, and people tend to feel a whole lot better. Stress mess. Okay. Menopause is really, really, really bad in this country because people are super stressed out when they get there. Women are adrenally burnt out. They're living off their ovarian hormones and they're living off their adrenal hormones simultaneously. And they're kind of squeezing the juice out of both of them because life is just more stressful than it needs to be, and we need to really take every step we can to calm it down. But not everybody, you know, we're not always able to do that. Years of stress weakens the adrenals, and when the ovaries stop producing sex hormones, all the burden, all the weight goes back on the shoulders of the adrenal glands, but they're not capable of rallying because they never got a break. So this is where the hot flashes come from, because all of a sudden you went from having, like, you know, let's say your estrogen production is here. You have two organs in your body producing estrogen, so now you're here, and now one drops away, so your estrogen levels crater and your adrenal glands try to make up the make up the lack, but you're just going to go like this. And when your estrogen levels are going like this, you're going to have hot flashes all the time. Because your brain is sensitive to estrogen and it tries to set the thermometer, but the thermometer is not accurate because estrogen is not accurate. It's moving up and down. This is why plant-based estrogens like black cohosh or kudzu or flax or even soy isoflavones, stuff, soy's a healthy food. Don't let anybody tell you different. There's just, not everybody does well eating legumes. And when it's GMO'd, it's even worse, right? But that's why these plant-based estrogens help calm the roller coaster of menopause. Because plant-based estrogens, if there's a deficiency in a woman's body of estrogen and you give her plant ingredients that act like estrogen, they're not as strong as her natural estrogen, but they'll sit on the receptor and help activate the machinery. And then on the other end of things, when a woman, let's say a man, let's use a man as an example. A man he's been drinking milk for 40 years. He's been exposed to just a lot of estrogen that way. Doesn't necessarily buy organic, doesn't believe in it because it's just a scheme to get more money from you, obviously. That person has also been using personal care products off the shelf at a regular grocery store that have full of synthetic hormones and all kinds of stuff. So he's been exposed to a lot of estrogen, lots of estrogen. Now, when he comes in for a detox, what you would end up doing is you've got toxic molecules binding to the cell and sitting in there, and whenever that binding happens, that's where the rubber meets the road. So a hormone floating in your blood is one thing, but a hormone connecting to its receptor, that's where the action is. And so what you do is you give people with too much estrogen a whole lot of plant-based estrogens. And so the plant-based estrogens kind of get into the cell and they'll kind of knock out toxin, and then the plant-based estrogen sits where the toxin was. And now the toxin's free floating and it's going to drift down to the liver and get kicked out. That's how it works. Now if you have a deficiency of estrogen, the receptor is starving for somebody to sit there and hang out with a hormone to meet it. Now you take plant-based estrogens and they'll go in and bring the person who's deficient up, and they'll bring the person who's toxic down. That's the beauty of how that works. Estradiol? Estradiol is not plant-based. It would just be it would be considered a bioidentical human estrogen. But not necessarily a bad thing. It's not more toxic. If it's a bioidentical estradiol, then it's one thing. If it's like a synthetic chemical fake estradiol, then it's a whole nother beast. Yeah. Good.
So the word doesn't tell you which one it is.
The word doesn't. You have to kind of like read just like on food, you have to read the label to get the chemical name. So that's why menopause is so hard on women. Their adrenal glands are torn up, and then the adrenal glands can't deal with the stress of modern life and make all the hormones without having a bunch of symptoms showing up. The dangerous thing about women when they're not balanced and healthy is when you take estrogen away. As I said before, estrogen causes strokes. That's true, it can't be argued. But lack of estrogen also puts a woman at risk. The story gets a little more confusing. But women with menopause before the age of 42. So the average age of a hysterectomy in the United States, I think, is 37? 37. And they call it hysterectomy because medical doctors used to treat women as hysterical. I'm just letting that be known, okay? So if you lose your uterus and ovary, you lose estrogen. You become a deficient estrogen person. And without estrogen, your body doesn't make choline very well. Choline is why it's what covers it's the lining of our nerves. It's like the insulating white matter in our brain and in our nervous system. It's used in the liver to clear garbage and process fats. It's a phenomenally cool ingredient. Choline's amazing. There's only one single way in the body that we make it. And it's an enzyme that turns on and off when there's estrogen around. So if you have a lot of estrogen, you make a lot of choline. If you have a little bit of estrogen, you don't. So think about it in terms of Mother Nature's point of view. We already said earlier that a woman, when she's pregnant, has 30 times the amount of estrogen than when she's not pregnant. Okay, you guys remember that? 30 times is not a small number. 30 times the amount of estrogen is going to cause a whole lot more choline production. Estrogen allows choline to be produced. The more estrogen, the more choline. Well, what is a pregnant woman doing? She's building a nervous system from scratch. What is the brain made out of? It's the first thing that forms. It's the most important part of the whole body. It's made out of choline. So Mother Nature is really smart. It saves the thyroid hormone for the baby, and it makes sure that when a woman's pregnant that it can pump out tons of methyl groups, B vitamins, and raw material to help grow a baby from scratch. Everything makes sense. If we don't understand it, it's because we're not asking the right questions, right? But when you take away the estrogen, you take away the woman's ability to make choline. And choline is very anti-inflammatory and helps protect against cardiovascular disease. There's other things that estrogen does too, but that's one of them. Here's the data on that. So this is like an artist's rendition of a cell wall, if you can like use your imagination. Those little dots and tails, that's the fatty cell wall. And choline is living in your cells. That's where it's anchored in there. Your body's full of it. But when you have a deficiency of B vitamins, when you run out of folate, B9, methyl groups, really important stuff, your body goes, well, I need methyl groups to survive in every cell of my body, so I'm going to pull it out of the wall and use that because it's not coming from up there, so I'm going to pull it from the wall, and we're gonna move on down the road. So what happens is you can have degeneration of your nervous system. You can get dementia. You can get lack of your liver can get fatty. You get gallbladder problems from this. So low estrogen is low choline, low folic acid, I shouldn't say folic acid, low folate, low B9 is also a choline problem because your body starts to steal from your cell walls. So hang in there, we're working towards the end here. There's light at the end of the tunnel, I promise. So this is it. When women have a reduced level of stroke and cardiovascular disease compared to men while they're menstruating. Once they hit menopause, it changes. And now women have a higher risk than men. I'm suggesting that the things I've just told you have a big impact on that. They lose the ability to make these vitamins that they could make when they were able to have kids. And now when the estrogen goes away, the ability to make those vitamins the right amount does too. So there's ways around it. You just have to be aware of where your body's at and kind of eat and supplement accordingly. So women who abruptly and prematurely lose estrogen have a double risk, twice the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. And I'm going to suggest, based off the research that I've seen and looked at, that B vitamins protect against dementia. Lack of estrogen causes a more profound B vitamin deficiency over time that's not being addressed, and women then have brain degeneration at a higher rate. B vitamins are really, really good in many ways. And then this is hormone replacement. They're just basically, it's not necessarily the safest approach. I mean, this is the synthetic stuff. You got to go bioidentical. You got to work with somebody who knows how to do that. And it's not a part of my practice, but there's nurse practitioners in the area. I give you some good names, and anybody, all over the country, they're skilled, nurse practitioners, maybe naturopaths would be a better selection for this need. Integrative MDs, but you don't want to mess around with synthetic hormones. I've already demonstrated that the world is full of estrogen already in lots of toxic ways. So you got to go natural as much as you can. Because they're saying now that, okay, you give a woman with low estrogen, synthetic estrogen, and now she has a higher risk of cardiovascular. So if she doesn't treat her estrogen problem, she has a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. But if she takes fake estrogen to try to fix it, it can go on the other end of the scale and cause it on that end. So natural is better all the time, always, always, always. One more video. Okay, we're here with Jo Lynn, who has been doing some work with us in our office for some challenging symptoms she was experiencing. And Jo Lynn, would you just share with us briefly what was going on with you when you first came in?
I was experiencing cortisol deficiency, adrenal fatigue, high blood pressure of unknown origin, muscle and joint pain, extreme fatigue, and had been diagnosed with a genetic defect with my adrenal glands, and had just come off major surgery, lost half of my left kidney, and had a septic episode that almost took me in the ICU a year prior to this. So did some genetic testing and found out that I had the MTHFR reductase deficiency, homozygous, meaning that I had the worst ability to methylate. And without methyl donors, the things that I went through the last couple of years was not going to get better. So started taking methyl donors, started taking antivirals, antibacterials that are natural, and some immune support supplements, and within the last 4 weeks I've come from 70 milligrams of steroid support to between 10 and 12. That keeps my muscle and joint pain in check. The fatigue is just about gone. I'm able to exercise now. I'm doing some interval training and a little bit of weightlifting, which I've not been able to do any of that. My blood pressure is normal. I was on Norvasc and Micardis at 80 milligrams a day, and I'm off both of them. Not only is my blood pressure down, but it's 116/75, which is the best blood pressure you can have, and that's absolutely amazing. And I'm on a ketogenic diet that Dr. Rostenberg put me on, and my digestion's better, and my energy's better, and
Sure.
everything.
So given the progress you've made in working with us, would you recommend what we do here to others?
Absolutely. I would have to admit I was a little, didn't know if I believed in kinesiology, I guess, but I have to say that after 3 years with traditional medicine and 4 weeks, I feel like myself again. You need to give it a try.
So that was a recent patient experience in my office, and that represents kind of the pinnacle of what we do. Not everybody has the same problem, not everybody has the same outcome, obviously, but this individual has been through something pretty serious and pretty complex, and she's very educated herself. She's actually a dietitian and a health coach herself. She knows her stuff. But treating yourself becomes very difficult, if not impossible, and I would never recommend it, right? And what we were able to help with her is get to the root cause of what her problem was. She had an infection that almost killed her in the hospital. Now, just because you walk out of the hospital under your own volition doesn't mean that the infection is gone. It means that your life's no longer in danger at that exact moment, but it doesn't mean that your body's working the way it's supposed to. So we need to look at it differently, and in her case, that's what we did. We were able to determine that everything that was going on, it was just major, infectious problems, and basically, as you saw, we treated the cause of her body's dysfunction, and it helped all these other hormone issues, the adrenal fatigue and her exercise, her energy. So the goal in any treatment is to get to the root of what's causing the problem. You don't know how many things that's going to help. You just know that's where you're supposed to start, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the solution. I'm going to kind of run through these slides pretty quick. You guys have been a great audience and patient. Thank you. But low blood sugar is the worst thing that could happen to somebody on a day-to-day basis. I talked about the toddler who got pissed off and threw his toys around the room and kicked and punched and scrapped, and then 20 minutes later, felt better. We've all seen kids do this, okay? It's just human nature. But what that kid probably also has going on for him, or her, him, probably him, is low dopamine, as we said, but low dopamine is because of low blood sugar. Okay, there's an article on my website, redmountainclinic.com, about dopamine and blood sugar. It's got a YouTube video and a big article. It kind of explains things. But as you're only able to make dopamine and serotonin in your brain if you have insulin in a healthy range. So when your insulin is low, because your blood sugar is low, you don't hardly make any dopamine or serotonin. Doesn't matter who you are, you're not going to make any. And if you're genetically designed to have higher dopamine in order to function, like the people I told you about earlier, who are born with more dopamine in their brain, they're used to having dopamine in there. If it doesn't show up, they're not going to do well. Okay? People who are used to having sort of low dopamine, you know, they can deal because that's how they live all the time. But someone who's used to having high dopamine, if they go hypoglycemic, they're going to crash. They're going to slur their speech. They're going to get real clumsy and get injured on the soccer field or basketball court. They're going to get, you know, they're just going to, you're going to see potential in them, but you're going to see them like doing something good and then doing a bunch of stuff that you're like, why is your body acting this way? Why are you doing this? And the first place you look is low blood sugar. Because every time the blood sugar drops off the side of this mountain, you guys see that big arrow pointing down. Every time blood sugar drops, stress hormones are released every single time. So if their blood sugar drops 5 times a day, then they're going to release a giant amount of stress hormones 5 times a day, every day, week after month after year. Is that going to make that person feel good? Are they going to have a good gut? Are they going to sleep? Are they going to learn are they going to be able to adjust their behavior appropriately to different circumstances as a young person trying to learn how to grow up and be an adult? Probably not going to do that super well if they can't go 5 hours without having a giant stress reaction to their blood sugar dropping through the floor. So I'm really passionate about this because I used to be that kid, okay? It doesn't need to happen. You can fix this stuff pretty quick, pretty easy. So eating frequently is just the #1 rule. Vitamin B5 and vitamin B6 become super important also. So we have to sometimes give people 10 to 20,000 the RDA of B5 and B6 in order to make this problem, to fully support this problem. It's safe if that's what they need, right? But don't try to figure that out on your own necessarily. But eating frequently prevents the drop in blood sugar between, so breakfast to lunch can be 5 or 6 hours. I'm here to say that's too long. That's too long. Between lunch and dinner, it may be 7 or 8 hours. That's too long. You have to snack. That's how we're designed. Yes, fasting is beneficial. You fast every night when you sleep. You have dinner and then you have breakfast. When you get the flu, you fast for a couple days. You don't feel good, but when you're done, you feel a lot better. You've just gone through a fast. Now you eat small, frequent meals again. I meet a lot of people who are going on the water fasting trend that is circulating out there in the society and the internet, and they're not doing so great. So water fasting is a really bad idea. But eating small, frequent meals is a great idea. I like those foods. Some people need a little more carbohydrate. Some people feel bad when they eat paleo. There's a reason why. They can't break the meat down very well. They're bad digestion, which can get fixed. But they're not eating enough carbohydrate for their body's needs. Some people who are hypoglycemic, high metabolism, just need more carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates are evil. You just need to make sure that you get enough and that you don't eat too much. If you fall asleep after you eat, you definitely ate too many carbohydrates, I guarantee you. Food allergens. Everybody in my practice with a chronic problem, we have that conversation. So I'm a kinesiologist. I use muscle testing. I'm certified through the ICAK. It's a great organization. It's a difficult tool for doctors to learn, yet the reward that it gives the doctor and the patient is unbelievable. It's a great tool. You're basically able to ask the body a question, and the body, believe it or not, is smart enough to know what's wrong with it. Imagine that. It just doesn't speak English, French, or German, and it won't email you or give you a sticky note. But it will answer a question, yes or no. It will answer a question in a binary code, which is off and on. That's essentially how the whole process works. So it's all scientifically based. There's tons of research, but food allergy testing, you can spend a lot of money on it. I try to not have people spend money on tests. Testing is expensive, and all it does is make insecure doctors more secure. Now, it does a lot more than that, obviously. It does help give you information, but there's a limit to value of testing. And if you know which signs and symptoms you're looking for and what the background is, you don't need to do as much. But allergy testing can run you $1,000, not uncommon, to spend out of pocket just to get these tests run. And it comes back and it tells you you have a gluten allergy, an egg allergy, a dairy allergy, and you don't do great with soy or peanuts. Well, that takes about 4 minutes in my office. You know, not very long to figure that out. So there's a lot of different ways to figure out food allergens, but anything that creates inflammation like this is going to mess with hormone balance. The gut becomes, again, the focus of everything we do, your digestive system. You can't have hormone balance if you have a leaky gut, if you're not digesting your food. You know, people don't get into trouble because they eat too much. They get into trouble because they don't eat the right things and they don't absorb it. Just because you put it in your mouth and swallow it doesn't guarantee that it becomes part of your body, that you can use it. It requires a lot of things happening correctly in order for that whole amazing process to break your food up and feed you. And all the things I've already talked about tonight, stress, hormone imbalance, toxins, that makes it really hard for your stomach to work correctly. So we start with fixing digestion is the first place to start in anybody's life. Whether you're a baby with colic and you're fussy, or you're 78 years old, it doesn't matter. That's where you start, and that's what you work on. And once that's kind of improved, then you can go on to the next layer and work on that. Exercising lowers stress, but I would caution you, don't work out past 6 or 7 at night. You just raise a lot of adrenaline, and then it's hard to go to sleep, and you wake up the next day and you didn't sleep great and you're kind of sore. So try to keep your exercise in the morning or early afternoon. That's definitely better for you. There's not really a negative thing that can be said about yoga. It has a myriad of benefits. You don't have to go to a class. You just have to have the will to get a book, open the page, and try to understand it and practice it for a little while. Just do it. Even if you do a terrible job of it, it's still going to calm you down, and you'll learn something. So, you know, body awareness, learning about learn about your own body. Don't be so disconnected from it that you lose touch. Yoga is all about getting back in touch with your body, you know. Eat every 2 to 3 hours. Don't sit in a restaurant or at your house and chug 2 glasses of water while you wait for dinner. All you did was turn the oven from broil down to 200 and put food in it. Drink after you eat, half an hour or so. Drink before you eat. But when you're eating, maybe you limit your fluid intake to about a glass of wine, 4 or 5 ounces worth of fluid. Enough water to swallow all your supplements your doctor's given you, however that works. Lots of different supplements are helpful. I've talked about some of those. Patients in my office see this detoxification picture because this is kind of the world we live in. We're all exposed to toxins. Our body's well equipped to get rid of them, but the ability to remove a toxin requires nutrition, vitamins and minerals, and antioxidants. Because removing garbage from your liver, burning garbage in your liver, creates a lot of heat and a lot of inflammation. So your liver waits until you have enough vitamins and minerals and antioxidants present before it kicks that machinery on. And that's a way of protecting you against the side effect of detoxing when your body's not ready. So if you can get the right vitamins into your body, your pathways open up and things work. So really what you want to know when you go to a doctor, if you want to get your health in order, you ask 2 questions. You say, what does the body have too much of that it's trying to get rid of? Okay. The other question you ask is, what does the body need that it's not getting? You answer those 2 questions and simply get out of the way, and the body does what it always does, which is pretty much, it heals itself. But figuring out the answer to those questions, that's the art part of it. That's tricky. Thank you so much for watching this video and sharing it with your friends and family. I personally believe, as I'm sure you do as well, that educating ourselves about what it truly means to be healthy is the only way we're going to change healthcare. I have created a website as a resource for you. To take advantage of this information, navigate to www.beyondmthfr.com and take a look around. In addition to blogs and articles I have written, you will find a tab on the menu labeled Protocols. It is a growing list of tools that I use in my office to help support my patients. You will find background information on common health conditions, you will find a detailed supplement protocol, and you will find dietary advice to support the body's natural healing process. You will also have access to order recommended supplements at a discounted rate and have them shipped to your front door. I'm giving you the tools that I use in practice every day to help you overcome health challenges and live a happier, healthier life. I have done my best to give you that information, and you will find it on these protocol pages. If you are looking for more help than simply what supplements should you take or what diet should you follow, I'm inviting you to come to Boise and see me. Let me and my team and my staff take care of you. We have patients coming from all over the country and all over the area on a regular basis, and there's room for you too. Now, if coming all this way to Boise is too big of a commitment, then please pick up the phone or email my office. We can work together from a distance.